Hi there, Gavin here from Death Toll Racing. This is just a quick tutorial on how I am doing my beadlock rings. I have a lot of theories on why guys break bolts on those a lot, driving them around and the heads are popping off. And I think the way I'm doing it here should avoid that from happening without having to upgrade to grade 9 bolts and stuff. I don't really think it's a bolt issue. I think it's just more of an install issue. It is a time-consuming process to do it this way, just as a warning, but it will actually do it properly. Anyway, check the video out. Let me know in the comments below if I'm missing something or if you have a question on how I'm doing this. So, when you look at a tire, there's a heavy side and a light side, and they're indicated. That's what those red and yellow dots mean. We're going to put those to the inside, but the red dot's the heavy spot of the tire, the yellow dot is the light side of the spot of the tire. Pretty interesting. So to start with, you have a number of options. I like putting lube on them. So I'm just put, well, actually I better just pan you back down. So here to talk to you about it. Here, I'm gonna get both, that way if I forget. So we're putting the back side on first. You don't really need lube on the front side because you're not actually putting it over anything. So I'm just gonna use this paste. You can also use soapy water, or if you have really tight beads, if you go to Home Depot, there's a for pulling wire, electrical wire through conduit. They have this bottle and it's clear, and you can use it, and that actually works really good as a lube for a really tight bead. I mean, it works way better than soapy water. I don't know if it works any better than this. This stuff actually dries, and you won't even be able to see where it was, even if I did that. Once it dries, it doesn't do anything. It's pretty nice that way. So anyway, and it wipes right off your hands. It's I don't know what it's made of, but it's doesn't really do anything. It's got, you know what it feels like? It feels like Gojo, like that old Gojo hand cleaner. It kind of feels like that. So anyway, so you just put it on, just at an angle. Push it on there until it kind of stops, and then push down on it, and then you should be able to work it around like that. So I made that look really easy, and the key is the pushing down on it. Even though it doesn't seem like you do anything, then when you go to push rest tire on, it just pops right on, and that's it. So that the tire sits on there like that, and then we put the lock ring on, and it squeezes the bead in there. And so we'll get to that here in a second. We got to put anti-seize on. So make sure I don't have any on me. Yeah. All right, so now we got our, I'm really dumb. I forgot the most critical thing. I forgot the valve stem. I hope someone caught that at home. It's not too late, but that is kind of funny. I hope someone caught that and be like, hey, that idiot's not putting a valve stem on that. So just put that on there, and you'll see how good this works. I don't know if anyone's ever pulled a valve stem in before, but they are somewhat tight. The only problem is it's really slimy. Okay, so normally you would pry it in like that, but with that lube, that's literally all it takes. Really easy. Okay, back to where we were. This is where it's actually nice if these tires were stored stacked up where the beads all get real close together. So, because if they're wide, or you're putting this on a wheel that's like a really wide or narrow wheel, I mean, and where you'd have to suck that in there, it's actually kind of a pain in the butt getting that to stay. you have to like hold it on there and you're trying to put the wheel, the lock ring on and stuff. Anyway, it could be a pain in the butt. This is where I just was a second ago. So now you got like grade 8 washers. And you got grade 8 nut bolts. Online, people have a ton of problems with these things breaking bolts. And I think it's more of an install error than anything. Because you have to be absolutely nuts with tightening these things down. If you get in a hurry at all, I mean, you may as well just not even torque them. You may as well just start tightening stuff. Because it's super critical. You have to have the ring surface touching the wheel surface before you ever start tightening and torquing anything. And you don't want to ever force it down to touching it. So you have to work it down to touching it. And that takes a while, and you're going to see it. And I'm going to time lapse it. But you have to go around this thing 100 times, damn near, to get that right. But if you do it right, you're rewarded by not breaking heads of bolts off. And the reason the heads of the bolts break off is pretty simple. If you think about it, and you have this thing tightened down, or say you have a really thick bead there that you couldn't actually get to squish all the way down, to where you're actually torquing this bolt, these two metal surfaces together. You need to be torquing the two metal surfaces together while they're tight. If any of that torque is from the tire being squished, you're going to break the bolt. And you won't break it right away, you're going to break it while you're driving it. And the reason is, the tire, as it squishes around, is going to be pushing this ring around, and it's going to bust the heads of the bolts off. Because if you don't have this surface and this surface tight touching each other, that means this surface is going to be floating in the slop of the bolt holes, or even if there was no slop of the bolt holes, it's going to be flexing around from your tire pushing on it, and then it's going to be pushing on those bolts, and they're going to be flexing around like that until eventually they break and fall off. So 100%, if you can't get that thing tight on that wheel before you start actually having to torque it, so basically 5 foot-pounds or less to get that thing up to there, or 7 foot-pounds to get these two surfaces touching. If it takes any more than that, your bead is too thick, or you're not doing a good enough job of just skipping around it to tighten them. I get them real tight. Well, you'll see. I get them real good. I kind of just cross them this way, and then I just start skipping, going every other bolt all the way around. I'll go 12 bolts. Then I'll just go 1, and then go every other bolt all the way around, 12 bolts, skip 1, go 1. And I just keep doing that, and I do it with the clutch on a drill. So you don't want to use an impact. Put it on screw setting. Put it on, I got it on 22 there. I'm going to start at 15. I'm going to go around until 15 is not really doing very much, and then I'll jump it up to 22. And then I'm just going to do that again, and then then I'll come back. I'll unfast forward it, and we'll come back and I'll show you using paper and stuff in between, checking to make sure this ring is all the way tight down before. So, but if you're real careful, you should be able to get it all by the clutch. Eventually, it'll just stop turning the bolts as you're going around. But you'll notice as you're going, every time you do it, the bolts turn a little bit. And that's because you're squeezing that tire in. So then once the bolts stop turning, then we'll check it with paper, and if hopefully everything will be tight, and if it is, then we'll go through and start torquing it. If it's not, we're going to come back with this. We're not going to turn it up. We're going to just go around it again, and until those gaps are tight. So anyway, I'm going to get going on this. This is all going to be fast forward, and then I'll be back with you when we go to check for our gap. Okay, so my arms are numb. I got it to where they're going around them, and I'm not really getting any turning out of them anymore. But before, every time I'd get on there, it was going, you know, between 1/8 and 1/4 of a turn every time you get to them. So I was using the UPC sticker. I don't know if you can see it, or it's like part of the rubber right there as my indicator of when I stop and then just go one or go back one and then start skipping again. And that way I'm kind of distributing it a little bit. We were going down so slow that I wasn't too worried about warping the ring by doing it that way. But now we're going to check it. And so to check it, just grab a piece of paper, or you can get a feeler gauge or something. I actually almost like paper better because it grabs it better if it starts to go in. And I just drag the corner this way. I should have left it a little loose so we can actually find a spot. And that it grabs. And it's amazing, if you don't do it like the way I did it, this thing will be grabbing all over the place in spots. I don't know, like it definitely works. This is the third wheel I've mounted now, the third one of these. I'm not a bead lock expert, but I'm reading all the problems online, and I immediately knew why guys are breaking bolts on them. I mean, but I do come from an industry where that's a concern. So anyway, I got it all tight. So now we're ready to torque. So I didn't have it grab anywhere. So that's good. So that works good. The first few times I did it, I would stop going because it's like, it's not really turning that much anymore. Well, it would grab in spots, just here and there. It would grab. So that's when I'm like, okay, you just have to go around a whole bunch of times until it stops, until the clutch just stops. Because believe it or not, that thing is extremely consistent. And when I use these Snap-on digitals, and I'm not like a Snap-on guy. But they do make really good stuff. I mean, I really like their torque wrenches. So that thing consistently is about 7 foot-pounds. It's kind of amazing. Like all those are about 7 foot-pounds right now, and they're in there evenly. So now we're going to start. We need to get a Sharpie or a felt tip pen. We're going to torque them all to 17, which is the bottom of the spec. And we're going to do that in a kind of a star pattern. It's hard to do a star on this. It's really hard. That's why we got the felt pin. So how I'm going to do it, and I'll fast forward through it. So do all my talking now. I'm going to do here and 180, and then we're going to go 90 and 180. So that just made a cross. Now we're going to split our difference. So we'll go over it here. We'll go down that 180 from it. Then we're going to go 90 and 180. So now we just split the gap, but now we have uneven gaps. So we're going to go to the other side gap. So what it ends up being, when you have it 180 and then the 90 going across this way, there ends up being 5 in between. So I just grabbed the center one. That's the next cycle. So then you end up with pairs. And then you have to do it. And so then you're almost doing it redundantly. It turns into a super weird star because you have to do this. I don't know how good you can imagine this, but you have to do this bolt. And then you'll have to do this bolt, but you're doing this in a star. So you just do the whole series. You're always going 180 from each other. 180, then 90, 180, then 90, 180, then 90, all the time. So the first time through, I'm going to mark them. I'm going to put 1 dot on them. We'll go all the way through it at 17. Then we're going to turn it up to 23. And I'm going to start again. It doesn't matter where you start then. We'll start again. We'll mark it. We'll go 180. We'll do the exact same thing again. At 23 foot-pounds, and then we'll be good. But to double check it, then we're going to just go around it, all of them, and I'm going to use the counter here to ensure that we went all the way around and checked them all that they were 23 foot-pounds. Because every once in a while you will, because of the sequence you're tightening these things up, and it is potentially still squeezing something. It may not be evenly 23 foot-pounds. You may have, like, if you tighten this one first, say this is the first bolt you tightened, so then you go through your series, so now it's like the last one. That one still may be looser than these two since everything's squishing. So that's why I like to go around it once more and tighten it, because you will find every few that one is slightly under torque. So we're going to do that right now. So here we go. Oops. All right, there we have it. We're all the way through. And you can see how messed up that was. Hopefully, I'm going to speed that up so you don't have to watch it too drastically, but hopefully you'll be able to see the pattern that it ends up being. Yeah, it's kind of annoying. It takes forever. So now we start round 2, dot number 2, exact same thing, doesn't matter where you start. All right, there we go, 24 of them, 23 foot-pounds. Once it stops flashing there, telling me what I torqued it to, see there's the 24. So we're good. So now we're gonna go around it once more. I'm not gonna mark them this time, I'm just gonna go off of my indicator here, because we're just gonna go around it. So it doesn't matter where you start, we're just gonna ensure that all of them are still 23 foot-pounds. And don't be alarmed if you get a couple that need to be tightened, because those are probably the first ones that you went through. See, that would probably be one of the last ones we did. All right, so that was 48. So which is 24 from my last sequence, and then another 24 there. So that was 48. So that's it. You're pretty much done. I am going to go through them once more just to make sure that I got them all, and then we'll inflate it. So there, I can't say enough how critical that actually is to do it kind of the way I did it. And I know people will be arguing that just man, if you're at 23 foot-pounds, you're at 23 foot-pounds, and that's not actually right. Yes, you would be at 23 foot-pounds, but if you tightened here prematurely, you could get these bolts. Say you tightened it, it's tight here and here because you didn't evenly get the thing down. You went through and torqued it, you actually would be 23 foot-pounds the whole way, but your ring wouldn't actually be tight in here and here because you actually created a bow into it, and then you're just trying to squeeze the bow out, and that's what you're using your torque. You're torquing it, but you're just trying to squeeze the bow out, so you actually didn't have it torqued. It's not actually tight. So I hope that makes sense. But it's extremely critical, you know. And if you're one of the guys at home, because there was always going to be the guys saying what I did is stupid, or that doesn't make any sense, you're dumb. You're probably the guy that has bolts breaking off all the time, and you think just putting grade 9 bolts in is the answer. And the grade 9 bolts will help, definitely, but which they do exist. I know that sounds funny. Grade 9 bolts are kind of a specialty, and they're expensive. But if you do it this way, I don't think you're going to have a problem breaking bolts. And the other thing is, if you're getting it down and you cannot get your bead to squish to where you can't get your card in there, if that's the situation, you need to get a spacer, and they sell the spacers for them, and that just means your tire's bead is too thick. And if it's an old tire you're trying to put on a wheel, you're gonna probably have a really hard time getting these on there right that way. It's unfortunately you be able to squish it, and old tires, the rubber gets real hard, and it just is not pliable enough to use the bead lock, I don't think. Not without breaking bolts. Because you won't actually get the ring down tight on them. So yeah, that's that. I am going to just inflate it, pop the bead on. I will spray it the back side before I pop the bead on. I'll just spray it on the back side. Here, let's just do it. Well, no, I don't want to do it. I'll videotape it. I'll just cut this part out. I am going to go through these once more, though. Okay, so now we'll pop the bead on. So this is the same brand tire stuff as that, but you can use soapy water. It works just fine. dish soap. And this just helps so you don't have to put so much air in it to get it to pop on, and that way you don't, you're less likely to fold the rubber getting it on there. So it's tires, it's not rocket science, but at the same time you got to kind of take it seriously. I'm going to put these at 30. And it's probably a good idea to rub some soapy water around this surface here, and maybe even spray it down your bolts to make sure that you don't have a leak. You shouldn't have. It should be sealed up on that inside bead, especially assuming you're putting new tires on these. That inside bead, there it goes, and that should be all it'll do because it's lubed up. The inside, the bead of the tire, there's that flat face on there. It squishes that onto there, so that's actually what makes your seal. So you never should be relying on this outer ring to seal anything. So we're just going to run them right at 30. Here we go. I am going to balance these. So I have a leak. It's my valve stem. It's my core. See if I have a tool over here. I might have to go over by the tire machine. That's a little disturbing. It's not leaking now. I just touched it. Yeah, that's good. So I got to put this back on there. I don't want to put the water in the tire, not that it matters. Might have just had a piece of rubber or something in it. It's good now. Cool. So there we go. I brought another core over just in case. You got a tire machine and then I buy wheels and tires, you don't need it for it. Oh well. I will. Oh damn it. I see these all over the freaking place. Cool. Alright, so yeah, that's that. It's done. Now you can take rubbing alcohol and get that off. Not that you can buy rubbing alcohol right now, that's being hoarded. I have some though. Don't tell anyone.